It may seem to us like something perfectly logical to do, but in January 1942, it was radical, and there was no guarantee that it wouldn't make things worse and not better. I'm talking about the British and Americans agreeing to unity of military command. I'm Indy Neidell. This is a World War II in real-time special episode about the Combined Chiefs of Staff. On December 22, 1941, just 2 weeks after the attack on Pearl Harbor and the American entry into the war, the top military leaders of Great Britain and the United States meet in Washington, D.C. for the Arcadia Conference. On January 1, 1942, the Declaration of the United Nations is signed, in which the Allied nations declare their full cooperation in pursuing a total victory over the Axis powers. Also at the conference, the British and American Chiefs of Staff decide they will work together as the Combined Chiefs of Staff to establish the uniform, supreme military command of the Western Allies. For this, the overall task of the CCS is simple: find and formulate a military strategy that will bring the Axis powers to their knees as quickly and efficiently as possible. The Combined Chiefs of Staff are to consist of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, the JCS, and the British Chiefs of Staff Committee, the COS, as well as dedicated military advisors to President Franklin Roosevelt and Prime Minister Winston Churchill. By 1942, the British Chiefs of Staff Committee is General Sir Alan Brooke, Chief of the Imperial General Staff, Air Chief Marshal Sir Charles Portal, Chief of the Air Staff, and Admiral of the Fleet Sir Dudley Pound, First Sea Lord and Chief of the Naval Staff. Field Marshal Sir John Dill is chosen to be the permanent representative of the British Chief of Staff in Washington, D.C. The U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff is organized in February 1942 from the Joint Army-Navy Board and modeled after the British Chief of Staff Committee. Members of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff are General George Marshall, U.S. Army Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Henry Arnold, Commanding General of the U.S. Army Air Forces, Admiral Ernest King, Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Fleet, and Admiral Harold Stark, Chief of Naval Operations. In March 1942, Admiral Stark is taken out of the JCS to become Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Naval Forces in Europe. Then the positions of the Chief of the U.S. Fleet and Chief of Naval Operations are combined under Admiral King. And in July 1942, Admiral William Leahy joins the CCS with the rather complicated title Chief of Staff to the Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy of the United States. In short, he is representing the American president as head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The CCS is to be the most powerful institution of the Western Allies. Together, the American and British Chiefs of Staff are to plan and organize a common strategic vision in global war on a scale never seen before. Much of this expectation stems from the experiences of the Great War. See, it took effectively until mid-1918 until the Western Allies had somewhat established a united command over the Western Front by putting British, American, and French reserves under Marshal Ferdinand Foch. Although this was still a limited mandate, it proved to be a step in the right direction as it overwhelmed the German forces in short succession. All members of the CCS were in uniform during the Great War, and many had first-hand experience of the lack of support for coordinated operations. This lack of coordination is to be overcome through combining the expertise of military high commands. The responsibilities of the CCS range from organizing grand-scale operations to the calculation of economic production rates to the distribution of supplies, from weapons and ammunitions, planes and tanks, to medical and field kitchen supplies. The CCS has control over the prioritization of each. They will supervise the development of new weapons and organize a worldwide supply chain schedule for each theater of war. Since Washington, D.C. is chosen as the home base of the CCS, though, this presents a logistical problem for the British. Most of British high command must remain in London to stay in touch with the war and Winston Churchill. So the British Joint Staff Mission is created with designated high-ranking representative stand-ins for the British Chief of Staff, while the Chiefs of Staff of the British-American Alliance would meet Face-to-face during the major conferences of the war, the British Joint Staff Mission consults with the American Joint Chiefs of Staff in Washington on a weekly basis. Sir John Dill and Winston Churchill do not get along, to say the least, though. Churchill was about to send Dill to Bombay, but the U.S. entry into the war changes his plans last minute. Dill accompanies the Prime Minister to the Arcadia Conference and simply remains in D.C. as the head of the British Joint Staff Mission, which is, as it will turn out, the smartest thing he could have done. Dill's perfect manners and cool-headed demeanor make a strong impression on the American generals. With American Army Chief of Staff Marshall, he forms a personal partnership and informal friendship, which pretty much embodies the transatlantic alliance. Marshall is excellent at establishing efficiency and knowing when to drop formality in order to overcome bottlenecks in planning. Unlike Churchill, who wants to stay on top of everything on a daily basis, American President Roosevelt can be absent for weeks. So Dill and Marshall provide each other with first-hand updates about their respective militaries and take great steps in turning the CCS into a real center of combined leadership. Chief of the Imperial General Staff Brooke has been very unpopular with the Americans with his often forceful and tactless behavior, and he serves the alliance best in London, keeping Churchill in check. Much of the success of the CCS relies on the generals making the right assessments of the war and not being pressured into dangerous endeavors. But not everything goes so smoothly, of course. Ernest King is pretty much the most powerful admiral in modern world history and knows it. And King is very intelligent, confident, and ambitious, but also arrogant, stubborn, and competitive, which gives constant cause for trouble in the CCS. Despite his military brilliance in naval matters, he is quick to make enemies. From the American entry into the war, he calls to focus on the Pacific and retaliate against the Japanese fleet, while most of the CCS has decided on a Germany-first strategy. One of King's major gripes is over resources. See, unlike Britain's Royal Air Force, the American Air Force is not an independent branch of service, and its forces are dispersed under the control of the Navy and the Army. This, of course, leads to inter-service tensions with Lieutenant General of the Army Henry Arnold. Like his British counterpart, Marshal of the Royal Air Force Portal, Arnold sees the war being decided in the long run. They favor huge, long-range bomber fleets that will bring about a slow but lasting victory over their enemies. King, on the other hand, feels they must prioritize immediate victories first and outfit the Navy with short-range submarine hunters and scout planes. To find common ground, the formal meetings take place each Friday afternoon in the Public Health Building in Washington, D.C. The Public Health Building is chosen as neutral, directly across from the Army and Navy Department buildings and close to the White House. There, they begin planning for the first battle to be fought and hopefully won in 1942, the War in the Atlantic. Pretty much every strategy the CCS comes up with depends on a continuous stream of cargo supplies shipped via large merchant fleets across the oceans. But although the CCS has command over every item that is to be shipped, the merchant ships themselves are still under civilian control. The hindrance, I guess, that neither Great Britain nor the US are military dictatorships forces the CCS to negotiate. But since each member of the CCS speaks with the highest authority of his service branch, each general is free to address the government, the factory owners, or the press on his own volition. When Arnold wants his fleet of B-29 bombers to come to life, he uses his personal contacts at Boeing and Douglas to get insight into the possibilities of production and design. Each member of CCS is a workhorse in his own right, and many strain their health with the constant travel and just the sheer size of the task at hand. Dealing with the military is time-consuming enough, but additionally, they must keep in touch with the government and the public. Arnold suffers 4 heart attacks during the war, and Admiral Pound will resign in September 1943 with serious illness caused by stress. The combined chiefs of staff is not just a group of generals and admirals sitting around a round table like in King Arthur. By late 1942, The CCS is supported by a huge bureaucratic structure filled with hundreds of secretaries, couriers, telephone operators, advisors, stenographers, and planners. The British support staff alone is 3,000 strong and organized in several subsidiary organizations, which in turn have their own respective subsidiary organizations, such as the Combined Munitions Assignment Board, the Combined Administrative Committee of the Combined Shipping Adjustment Board, each dedicated to setting the decisions from the CCS into motion. And as long as the CCS functions, the British-American alliance has a common course to follow. Throughout the war, it will be further streamlined into a more efficient organization. A major contribution of CCS is that they place every theater of war under the command of one acting general. This unity in the field is often badly needed, as the Allies must manage multinational and multi-service forces pretty much everywhere they fight. They also overcome the competition between the services, which naturally compete for budget, personnel, and supplies. By giving overall command to a multi-service organization, unnecessary and arbitrary demands are curbed from the top down. Over time, the CCS grows into the powerhouse it was supposed to be. The Axis powers will never be able to come up with something even remotely similar. While Germany, Italy, and Japan have their own chiefs of staff, neither is able nor willing to negotiate for a common course, nor even trusts each other enough to share vital information. The combined chiefs of staff, despite all the difficulties at hand, become arguably the most important war-winning tool the Western Allies create. In pooling together their best military minds, with sufficient authority and control over resources and troops, victory over the Axis will only be a matter of time. Jumping into the post-war future, Britain, France, and the US will not always find the path of unity smooth. In fact, they are capable of making a serious mess. Check out our mini-series on the Suez Crisis to see one shining example of that right here whenever the first episode comes up. And join the Time Ghost Army, excuse me, let me say that again, and join the Time Ghost Army at timeghost.tv or patreon.com to get ever more fantastic content like this or that mini-series. And do not forget to subscribe. See you next time.